because Obama was criticized for not doing the exact same thing. So we thank you so much for joining us, Robert Costa, and welcome to.
It's a real honor to be here.
Great stuff. Let's take a look at the real president and what he would do in this situation.
Well, let's get straight to it. Let's bring in the 45th president of the United States, Donald Trump. Mr. President, thank you so much for joining Fox and Friends Weekend.
Well, thank you. It's an honor. And we have a lot of problems in this country, but it's an honor to be with you.
Well, we're grateful to have you, sir. Well, let's start with the headline we've had all morning long. You know, what's happening in Russia, what's happening in Ukraine. The White House right now is saying an attack could happen at any time. On your assessment, where are we and how did we get here?
Well, first of all, it's shocking because this should have never happened. It should have never happened. It would not have happened. And how we got here is when they watched Afghanistan and they watched the most incompetent withdrawal in the history of probably any army, let alone just us. They saw that, and President Xi and President Putin, watch what happens with China very soon, but with Taiwan. But they watched that and they said, what's going on? They don't know what they're doing. And all of a sudden, I think they got a lot more ambitious. I think Putin really wanted to negotiate for a period of time. I think when he watched Afghanistan, when he watched that unbelievably bad withdrawal, incompetent, where they took the military out first, where they left $85 billion worth of equipment behind for the Taliban to have and to sell and to use. And, of course, the death that happened. When they watched all of that, I think they got emboldened.
President Trump, Joe Biden is scheduled to be on a call today with Vladimir Putin. What do you think he can say? What should he say? If you were in office today, what would you say to Vladimir Putin?
Well, I wouldn't be in this position because we're in a very bad position right now. And it would have, as I said, it would never have happened. I know him very well, got along with him very well. I stopped his pipeline. I sanctioned them more than anybody ever sanctioned them. Nobody was ever tougher on Russia, but I got along with Putin very well. We respected each other. I think you have a whole different ballgame right now. This is just an exercise. He's not going to tell him anything, and I don't think Putin's at this point going to be listening. It's going to be very interesting to see what he does.
Those two things don't match up. Like, he was very tough, but also, like, they got along very well. I was tough but fair. He loved me and he respected me.
In terms of the depth, will he take a small piece? When Biden originally said he's going in, everybody was like, did he just say that? Nobody could believe it, but he said it. And it was almost like a card. Ukraine went crazy when he saw that, when they heard that, the president.
He's right.
But
this is right.
The phone call, I think, is perfunctory. I don't think.
He's literally right. Where he said, which is crazy. Again. And then they backtracked it, and then they said, oh, well, we could go in if they fucking were to do something.
Much is going to come out of it.
Yes, sir. Republicans have introduced a bill that would block aid to Ukraine until our southern border is secure. The thinking is, why would we be worried about a border in Europe when there is a disaster happening right here at home? Do you think that those two issues should be linked?
Well, I certainly understand how people feel. We had the strongest border we've ever had, our southern border. We were 3 weeks away from finishing the wall. After going through 2.5 years of lawsuits with the Democrats and winning them all, we were 3 weeks away from, think of it, finishing the wall, which is largely, frankly, finished anyway. It's a tremendous help. We had the best numbers in the history of our country on the southern border. Very little was coming in. Very few people were coming in other than coming in legally. We had the lowest drug numbers, the best drug numbers in the last 32 years, and they were getting much better rapidly. And all of a sudden, this guy takes over, and the border is opened, and we have millions of people. I think it's 10 million. They say 3 million. But people coming in, countries all over the world are releasing their prisoners into our country. We're like a dumping ground. So I can
What?
certainly understand how people feel when they say, let's try and tie one to the other. We fight for other people's borders, but we don't fight for our own border. We're the strongest, the most secure border we've ever had at the south. And Mexico.
Dude. They're so fucking... The Republicans are so good. Like, they're just so fucking good at propaganda, man. How are you going to fight against this? When the dumbest person on the planet can, like, cohesively put together a fucking strategy that appeals to the Republicans and uses, like, isolationist terms, despite the fact that Trump is very much a warmonger, okay? Like, they're so effective at brainwashing people. This rhetoric is incredibly powerful. And if you don't recognize it, I don't know what to tell you. Like, when did Trump go to war? Dude, Trump literally assassinated Qasem Soleimani. He destroyed the Iran denuclearization agreement, which was like the signature foreign policy accomplishment of the Obama administration. What was the fucking treaty with Russia on nuclear weapons as well? Like nuclear weapon development treaty. What are you talking about? Like, one of the first things he did was drop the mother of all bombs.
Mexico was great to me. They helped us. It gave us 28,000 soldiers free of charge, because otherwise we would have, as you know, tariffed all of their cars and things coming in. And we got along great.
Trump literally said, I am going to destroy cultural sites, which is definitionally, like, universally considered an act of terror, okay? Like, there's not a country that goes, oh yeah, you're going to destroy cultural landmarks. That's not a fucking an act of terror. Like, that was literally just him saying, I'm going to do terrorism in Iran. Or was it Afghanistan? It was Iran, right?
Great with Mexico. We had the Mexico stay in Mexico policy. Now it's called stay in the United States. Whoever you are, just come on in. No, it's a very terrible thing, and I must tell you, I do understand how they feel when we're fighting for other countries, but we're not fighting for our own.
Yeah, Mr. President, not only are we fighting for our own, we're facilitating that transportation with secret flights in the middle of the night, things you've heard about as well. But I want to go to our other border, if we can, Mr. President, and the idea of truckers and the trucker freedom convoy that's happening there, not just in Iowa, but now on trade routes along the Canadian border. You've heard what, who you call them Justin from Canada, what Justin Trudeau has said about them. He's characterized.
The funniest part of this argument, once again, is that, Trump is bitch made in terms of, like, deportations. Both Obama and Joe Biden have deported more, so, like, just bitch made.
Them as racist, as bigots. But their message has been clear from the beginning, Mr. President. The list of their demands has been terminate vaccine passports, terminate vaccine mandates, and stop the divisive rhetoric. They've been straightforward. They want freedom. What's your message to both the Freedom Convoy and Justin Trudeau?
People all over the world are watching, and they have respect for what they're doing. They're tired of being pushed around by incompetent people, being told what to do, being forced with the mandates. The mandates should have not happened. I mean, I'm very proud of Warp Speed. Everybody has given us credit. Nobody thought it was possible to do what we did. And that includes therapeutics, by the way, Regeneron and the various therapeutics that work so well. But what we did with Warp Speed was great. But the mandates are very, very bad, very, very bad. And I think there's a lot of respect for what they're doing. I see they have Trump signs all over the place, and I'm proud that they do. But that's what happens. You can push people so far. And our country is a tinderbox, too. Don't kid yourself. And there are plenty of our country up there right now, folks. When you look at what's happening, in Canada, our country, I think, is far more of a tinderbox than Canada.
President Trump, we're watching blue states begin the process of loosening restrictions across the country. In my one chance to interview in the past, President Trump, I asked you about Dr. Fauci. You were at the front end on so many things. As we panicked as a nation, you talked about balancing the shutdowns against our economy. And I asked you at that time about Dr. Fauci and the way the public viewed him. And you were beginning at that time to express some skepticism. I'm curious, and I'm not trying to give you the answer ahead of time, but I'm curious, if you look back on the past 2 years, some of which was under your watch, when it comes to COVID, what would you have done? What would you do differently if put in the same position? With perfect hindsight, what, if anything, would you do differently?
Well, we haven't been given credit, but we're starting to get credit. Warp speed was phenomenal. I closed up the country to China. I closed up the country to Europe. That was incredible. And I filled the shelves. I filled up the cupboards of the states, which they were unable to do themselves. You had some very competent governors, and you had some very incompetent governors. But, you know, I went around with the cupboards were bare, and they were. As far as Fauci, and that was a big thing, the ventilators and all of the equipment and all of the things that we were able to get, from goggles to clothing and the plastics, and we did an amazing job. Got no credit for it, but everything is stocked, and right now the whole country is stocked for something like this. The country, and this is long before I got there, was not prepared. Fauci, however, was not a big factor with me. He is a big factor now because Biden chose to make him such, but he was not a big factor with me. He said he didn't want to close to, as you know, very strongly, because we talked about this, he didn't want to close up to.
For the record, people, of course, refer to him as President Trump. That's what happens. When you're a president, you're always a president for life, okay? No one says ex-president. Usually they have president, they say President Trump. For those of you who don't know, and like hyper-focus on that.
To China, which was heavily infected. He didn't want to close up to Europe, which was heavily infected. 4 months later, he said that President Trump made a great decision and saved perhaps hundreds of thousands of lives, because I was really a single vote. I had 21 people in a room, and none of them wanted to close it down, but I did because I saw what was happening in China and in Europe. Fauci did not play as big a role with me. He played actually a pretty light role, and